Will Bitcoin see lower prices again this week, or is the Bitcoin bottoming and is Bitcoin ready for a pump to $80,000? This week is going to be super important and very interesting. I think there's many trade possibilities across the board. First off, let's start on a higher time frame for Bitcoin before we form a lower time frame bias and trading idea. What we can see on a higher time frame is that Bitcoin is still range bound over here, and that after the first deviation, we got a second bigger deviation, and we even got a third potential bigger deviation over here. But currently, and that is something that we should not be underestimating, is that Bitcoin is forming a bit of a deviation back inside of the range and is now currently falling beneath that range low again. When we go to the 4-hourly time frame over here, we can see that the range low has been acting as support many times for the Bitcoin price, and the fact that we are currently rejecting off of that range low is definitely not something that we should be underestimating right now, and it's something that is pretty scary in my opinion, and not a big sign of strength by the bulls. Because after a reclaim over here like this with a strong pump up, you want to see consolidation and expansion higher instead of offering a pullback and instead of falling beneath the range low once more. Now, something that is also making me cautious and making me slightly bearish over here is the fact that on the weekly time frame, guys, we have this massive wick to the downside. It's also the fact that on the daily time frame, guys, we have another massive wick to the downside with a flat daily candle right above it over here, which means that we know wicks are a big draw on liquidity. Why is a wick a draw on liquidity? Because a wick is indicating too fast of a price movement, and if price moves too fast, it means that market makers and the bigger players and institutions in this market do not get the opportunity to fill their bigger buy and long orders. So what do? They won't let the price move away without them being in a position, because that would mean that they're not going to profit from the move towards the upside. So what do next? They push the price back to that liquidity pool where their unfilled orders are still waiting to get filled. They fill their orders before then potentially reversing the price back towards the upside. And that is something that I'm currently seeing on the Bitcoin price as well. Because like I said, big wick to the downside on the daily, big wick to the downside on the weekly. And we know that these wicks, they tend to get filled at least for 50%. So let's mark out the 50% wick fill level on the weekly time frame. And let's also be marking out the 50% wick fill level on the daily time frame, because they are both equally important. Now on the weekly, we can also see that we have a bit of a wick towards the upside. I also kind of want to mark out that 50% wick fill level as well, because later on we will see that it's a quite interesting level. So we know that the draw on liquidity, in our opinion, is currently to the downside, which means that our bias this week preferably is to look for shorts. Now, something that I've been using last week for the very first time is the Minoma Statistics dashboard. It's a dashboard built by a friend of mine in the space who has gathered information over the past 5 years for multiple assets in the crypto space. Well, this dashboard is exactly showing to us the probability of certain daily highs and daily lows holding and certain weekly highs and weekly lows holding. It's also showing us the probability with exact percentages of how high the probability is of a further daily displacement up, a further daily displacement down, or a further weekly displacement up and down. Now when we go to the summary page over here, we can also see that it's exactly showing us a bias for all of the different assets over here, where we can see bullish, undecided, bearish, exhausted bear, strong bull for the day, for the week, for the current 8-hour, 4-hour and current hour. Personally, I'm only using it for the day and for the week. This dashboard, once you start understanding it, can help you so much with figuring out a bias for the day and for the week. This dashboard is best to use starting from Tuesday. So what I always do is let the Monday's range develop and go from there based on my technical analysis, and based on the statistic dashboard, I will form a bias, I will form an invalidation, and I will form a trade idea. But like I said, currently the bias is for more downside. So what am I expecting for this week? Well, what I'm hoping for this week is to get an early week pullback towards this 50% wick fill level over here. Why is it 50% wick fill level over here so interesting? Because when we go to the 1-hourly time frame, what we can see is that we have some liquidity resting over here above this high, right beneath the 50% wick fill level. We can also see that over here is where we formed the drop off for this huge impulse to the downside last week. That also exactly aligns with that 50% wick fill level. When we zoom in, we can see that over here we have quite the imbalance still to be filled on Bitcoin as well. So what I'm hoping for is that preferably maybe today or otherwise tomorrow is to get a bit of an early week pullback, take out the liquidity, form a weekly high here based on the statistics dashboard, based on price action, get a bit of a market structure to the downside, and that's where I'll be looking to short Bitcoin with my invalidation above that weekly high, that in that case hopefully has a high probability percentage wise to hold for the week, and then target a 50% wick fill level on the weekly and also the 50% wick fill level on the daily time frame. I think these are my targets for the week. I expect them to get filled this week, maybe next week, but you know what's quite nice over here is that even though I can form a bias for more downside, the statistics dashboard will offer me very, very high probability setups. And as long as I don't get the confirmation by the statistics dashboard of more downside for the week, Bitcoin can maybe still pump higher, but the statistics dashboard will point out to me that there's a higher probability of pushing higher. Now, if that's the case, I will obviously update you guys on Twitter, maybe even on YouTube, on Instagram, and obviously in the Discord community as well. And my bias will flip bullish. I will let it base off price action, liquidity, market structure, and the statistics dashboard that is right now providing me with an extra edge on the market. But for now, guys, expect the 50% wick fill level on the weekly, expect the 50% wick fill level on the daily before we are potentially going to see more upside. I think if we are going to fill these wicks over here, I think many people will start panicking once more. I think many people will start selling their positions and opening up shorts, and that might provide a beautiful reversal pattern towards the upside to target all of this liquidity that we have been building up right over here for the Bitcoin price, and eventually even pump towards 80,000 and probably even $100,000. Also for Ethereum, guys, we have this weekly wick over here, and I'm once again going to mark out it with 50% wick fill level on the weekly, and I'm also once again going to mark out that 50% wick fill level on the daily time frame over here. But for Ethereum, guys, especially the 50% wick fill level on the weekly is super interesting to me. Why is that 50% wick fill level on the weekly so interesting to me? Is because of the fact that it's exactly aligning with this sell liquidity low. Why is there plenty of liquidity resting over here beneath this low as well, besides the fact that we have the 50% wick fill level? It's due to the fact that we have this fake break of structure over here. That fake break of structure induces people into opening up breakout long positions over here or pullback long positions over here. Where are these people going to place their stop loss? Exactly right beneath the low right over here. And that's a beautiful potential invalidation for retail traders, and that's exactly the kind of liquidity that we as market makers and institutions want to target. So that's a beautiful draw on liquidity also to the downside for Ethereum. Now on the weekly, we can see that we have no wick towards the upside on the weekly, so nothing interesting based off that fact. But what we can see on the 4-hourly time frame is that over here we are creating a bit of a fake break of structure towards the downside, which means that in my opinion, there's going to be liquidity resting over here. There's going to be liquidity resting over here. And if we go to the 1-hourly time frame, we can see that there's also going to be some liquidity resting right over here for Ethereum, which means that we have both liquidity to the downside, but we also have quite some local liquidity resting towards the upside for Ethereum. Now, internally, we have some liquidity resting over here. So let's say our higher time frame bias is for more downside, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that you want to start looking for shorts over here. We always want to enter where other people are getting stopped out. In this case, that means that we are either going to purge this buy side liquidity before downside, or we are even going to purge all of this buy side liquidity before more downside. Once again, expecting and hoping for an early week pullback over here, take out some of the buy side liquidity, then based off the statistics, price action, liquidity, market structure, that kind of stuff, I want to form some confirmation over here for a weekly high before we are going to short it over here with our invalidation over here, targeting that 50% wick fill level and the sell liquidity over here. Now, if that's the case, we are going to be looking at a potential trading idea like this with our invalidation over here, and as a target, this sell liquidity and maybe even a new monthly low for Ethereum. Once again, guys, if price action and the statistics dashboard are not going to be providing us with beautiful and high probability confirmation, there's obviously the probability that Ethereum might pump higher towards some more buy side liquidity over here. If that's the case, we're going to leave it and it's fine. What I want to see is that both my bias and confluences align with each other to provide me with high probability setups. I know that many people, after putting in this big wick to the downside on the daily and weekly time frame, are becoming extremely bullish again. Personally, I'm a little bit more cautious. Does that mean that we cannot continue higher from here, make new weekly highs, new monthly highs, and new yearly highs? Obviously we can. And if price action, statistics, market structure, liquidity are going to confirm that bias for more upside, I will be engaging with longs obviously. But for now, based off this drawn liquidity to the downside, personally I'm expecting more downside first before potentially more upside. I might be wrong, but if I'm wrong, I have both the dashboard and price action confirming to me that I shouldn't be looking for shorts and instead I'll flip to longs.